Cool, cool. All right, everyone, give it a minute or so, and then we'll get started in today's video. Hi, everyone. Just going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get it started here. Coming on today for a quick 15-minute video or so to give an update on what we're seeing right now in the supply of Bitcoin being exchanged and what that means for the price moving forward. So bear with me here. Just give it another 10-15 seconds or so. Just making sure my audio is all good, making sure everyone can hear me okay. Today's date is Saturday, November 21st, 2020. So thank you for joining me. If you want to support me, or if you like what you're going to hear through this conversation, you can do me the biggest favor. You can like this video, you can subscribe, and you can share it with someone else who's trying to learn. All right, sweet, great. So I think we're good here. So I'm going to get started. So hello, everyone. Good to be with you again. This is Joe Rapp. Today we're going to be talking Bitcoin supply. There's a lot of recent updates over the last week or so. A lot of big billionaires and hedge funds have come on the Bitcoin train. Ray Dalio's even now talking about it in a new lens. We're seeing a lot of this large institutional money that I've been talking about for quite a while now finally coming into the market. But one of the unique things we're seeing right now is that the supply of Bitcoin is becoming more scarce. And as you'll learn through this conversation, I'm going to walk you through a few different charts and also a few videos of this last week's updates to show you how the amount of Bitcoin that people are willing to sell is starting to diminish. And what that means is that there's going to be less Bitcoin on the market for people to buy at the same time that we're having a lot of large billionaires, banks, and institutions coming on board. And I think that this is going to propel the price above the $20,000 all-time high and will lead us to price discovery. So let's just get straight into it. Again, if you're joining me here today, if you haven't been following all this updates, what you can do is you can subscribe to my email newsletter. You'll find the link in the comments. You can also get one-on-one Bitcoin coaching from me for my Patreon. You'll find that in the comments. And then I've also left a few links in the comments where you can learn how to buy Bitcoin on Cash App. Definitely one of the easiest ways now. And you can also dollar cost average by buying Bitcoin with Swan Bitcoin. So dollar cost average means you're buying every week, every month, every 2 weeks. So you're always averaging your costs, your average buy price of Bitcoin lower. But let's just get straight into it. If you have any questions at all during this time, again, the comments are open. We're streaming across 4 different platforms right now, so just leave a comment. I'll answer it right as we get through it. Please use me as a resource over the next 10 minutes or so. That's why I'm doing this. That's exactly kind of what I'm here for. All right, so let's get to it then. So here we are. I'm going to switch over now. We'll start by taking a look at the price of Bitcoin. This is no surprise. I've shown this chart a few times now. So Bitcoin is still hovering around $18,500. It's not far from its all-time high of $19,600. So we're right on the cusp of breaking the all-time high, the last all-time high of Bitcoin. Last time Bitcoin reached its all-time high was December of 2017. So this was 3 years ago at this point. And over the last 3 years, as you can see, Bitcoin has consolidated down almost 90%. And we've come into this accumulation period throughout 2018. And then coming into 2020, that's what really started to propel the market back into an uptrend and what looks like is going to be the start of the next bull run here. So again, Bitcoin's price still hovering around 18,500. But the latest news with this price comes with the supply of Bitcoin. Max Kaiser tweeted this chart that shows the amount of Bitcoin. There's a Bitcoin shortage right now on the exchanges. So what you can see from this chart here is that these different colors in the chart represent the different Bitcoin exchanges. This black line represents the price in Bitcoin. You can see the price of Bitcoin over here. $10,000 is here. $800 is here. This is years. And then this is the amount of Bitcoin on the exchanges. So as the colors start to increase, what that means is that there's more Bitcoin being deposited into the exchanges for people to buy and sell. And you'll notice the peak of the amount of Bitcoin that was on exchanges was actually just at the start of this year, 2020. But ever since the start of 2020, you'll notice there's been a steady, sharp decline in the amount of Bitcoin that is on exchanges. What this indicates is that people are purchasing their Bitcoin and they're sending it off exchanges into cold storage. So what does that mean? That means that people are getting in, they're buying their Bitcoin, they're sending it offline, and they're storing it securely for the long term. So we are right now in what we're witnessing right here by this chart is that the people that got in early on Bitcoin, the ones that have been purchasing Bitcoin, have been dollar cost averaging, have been buying on Cash App. They've been storing their Bitcoin now securely offline, and that means that there's going to be less Bitcoin to be traded. Now, when this happens, when there's a supply shock like this, there's less Bitcoin to be traded, you start to see a massive increase in price. And that's simply because of supply and demand. This is economics 101. So this is happening at a time where we are now starting to see a lot of people start to get in. This is an article that was written by Cointelegraph. It says Bitcoin's shortage is real and PayPal is the cause, Pantera Capital claims. So PayPal, as of a week and a half ago, announced that they were integrating Bitcoin buying, selling, and payments into their application. So as of a week ago, PayPal started to integrate Bitcoin services into their company and into their software. This exposed 350 million people now to Bitcoin who weren't exposed to Bitcoin before. So now what PayPal is doing, because PayPal acts as an exchange now, PayPal has to buy a massive amount of Bitcoin in order to allow its customers to buy and sell it. The same thing with all these exchanges. So all of the exchanges that you see here, right here, they either have to buy the Bitcoin, they have to mine the Bitcoin in order to sell it to their customer base. So they're always trying to accumulate as much as they can. But now we're seeing PayPal and a lot of these larger institutions come on board now that are now, they're buying up all of the newly minted Bitcoin, all of the new supply of Bitcoin. This is what's leading to this shortage in Bitcoin right now. So when you hear a shortage in Bitcoin, it doesn't mean that there's not enough Bitcoin to go around. It doesn't mean that there's no more Bitcoin. It just means that there's less Bitcoin that people are willing to trade. And when that happens, price will increase quite significantly. And that just means that people are going to wait until Bitcoin achieves a higher price to sell their Bitcoin. So, this is something that I've been talking about quite a bit. I've been trying to get people on board this year because this is one of the last years. We're right now in this moment where it's one of the last moments that you can front run the banks, you can front run private equity, you can front run all of these individuals that added to the financial terrorism and stuff we're seeing in the current global financial system. This window is narrowing now as we're seeing PayPal purchasing, as we're seeing billionaires purchase, and as we're seeing less Bitcoin being available for people to trade. One of the other significant news updates that happened this week on why the price is increasing of Bitcoin is that I'm trying to explain to you that the billionaires are on board, the banks are on board. This is an interview that was done on CNBC with the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer of BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest private equity firm in the United States, and they're global as well. So with BlackRock making a comment like they're making a comment here, we're going to watch this video clip in a minute. You'll start to understand the FOMO, the fear of missing out that's starting to happen even within these big financial institutions now. They're realizing that Bitcoin's a real thing. They're late to the game. They're trying to get on board now, and they're trying to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. Let's listen into this interview real quick with the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer of BlackRock, the largest private equity firm in the United States.
Before you go, you had alluded to the distinction between what's happened with the price of gold and Bitcoin. And you said that you think it's moving towards Bitcoin. Is that a long-term trend? Does that mean you're a Bitcoin bull? I asked because we had talked to Jamie Dimon earlier this week, who, despite JP Morgan supporting crypto in a very big way, and actually Bitcoin to some degree, on Bitcoin itself, he seemed to think it's still very possible if it ever really reaches escape velocity, and maybe it's getting closer as it passes $18,000 per Bitcoin, that the government actually would try to regulate it.
So, Andrew, I mean, I think, listen, I think cryptocurrency is here to stay. And I think it is a durable, and you've seen the central banks that have talked about digital currencies. I think digital currency and the receptivity, particularly millennials' receptivity of technology and cryptocurrency is real. Digital payment systems is real. So I think Bitcoin is here to stay. I think, am I a Bitcoin bull? I mean, I don't do a lot of it or virtually any of it in my portfolios, my corporate portfolios, my business portfolios. But do I think it is probably, it's hard to say, is it worth the price it's trading at today? But do I think it's a durable mechanism that do I think will take the place of gold to a large extent? Yeah, I do, because it's so much more functional than passing a bar of gold around. And by the way, the way you can track.
So you just heard the CIO of BlackRock admit that he thinks that Bitcoin can overtake the market value of gold. Okay, so he didn't say he has it in his public or his company portfolios, but you just watched him now they're starting to understand, and he just admitted on public air that Bitcoin can take the place of gold. Now, gold's market cap overall is $7 trillion, I believe. It's in the trillions, and if Bitcoin was to overtake the market cap of gold, we're looking at roughly a $500,000 Bitcoin at that point. So now we're seeing these large, big banking institutions, these investment institutions, waking up to the fact that this is real and that they need to start accumulating because they need to stay competitive in the globe right now and for their financial services. So again, perfect opportunity. I wanted to come online today to just explain to folks what's happening right now. If you were someone that was sitting back and thinking, I'm going to buy the dip, or, I've been hearing about this for a few years, I'm going to put it off for another couple months to learn more before I get involved. The time is now. The time is now. We're starting to see this pendulum shift happening very quickly every single day now. And why is this happening? Why is private equity? Why are the banks interested? And that's because of the risk of inflation right now. So this chart is so this is from the Federal Reserve Bank. This shows the money supply as a percent of GDP. So here you'll see in the gray lines here, these are recessions. So this was the 07-08 housing crisis. You'll notice ours for the 2020 depression is going to be popping up here in the coming years. We'll be seeing that. But what you notice here is that the money supply. So how much dollars are being created at once by the Federal Reserve Bank, right? Because the Federal Reserve Bank creates money. This hasn't always existed, but the banks ever since the 70s and stuff were allowed to create money. And when they create more money, that's called inflation. What that does is it devalues all of the money that we all have, so it makes our money worth less. This is important for investments and investors because if they're holding cash, and cash is losing value because the Federal Reserve Bank is printing a lot of it, that means that their money in the future is going to be worth less. So investors and pension funds, they don't like this. They like to hedge against that, to hedge against the risk of inflation. Here you'll notice after the last housing crisis, we had a large increase in the money supply. This is the quantitative easing that we saw as a reaction by the Federal Reserve Bank. So they were printing money to try to get us out of it. But look at this sharp incline here. This is the 2020, the depression of 2020 that we're seeing. This is still the early stages here. I like to tell folks, we're in the first, maybe going into the second inning now of this thing. If you thought that at the end of 2020 it was going to be over, this is a multi-year process that's happening here. So now we're seeing a massive spike, a historical spike in the amount of money that's being created by not just the Federal Reserve Bank, but central banks all around the world as a result of the pandemic, the economy collapsing, and as I've talked about quite a bit, a lot of the the system's done. At the end of the day, that's what we're seeing here is we're seeing inflation in the dollar, the end of the dollar, and a transition to a new reserve currency. So this chart is exactly why now the CIO of BlackRock is racing to buy Bitcoin, why all the banks are racing to buy Bitcoin, and now you're going to see governments racing to buy Bitcoin. But that's going to be it, folks. You know, this is really, I just wanted to take the time to come online to try to just show this new chart to folks and to just try to explain the scarcity of Bitcoin. You know, we're going to see this pump up a lot faster than folks realize it's going to happen, and it's all because of supply and demand. Right now, again, we're seeing the supply of Bitcoin shrinking for the amount that people are willing to sell at the same time that we're seeing a lot of the large institutional players coming on board. But that's going to be it, folks. So again, if you wanted to learn how to buy Bitcoin, you can find those links in my comments. If you want one-on-one Bitcoin coaching, you can head over to my Patreon. Just join the Bitcoin Patreon, and I'll set up the 2 calendar meetings with you per month that I offer. And subscribe to my email where you'll get a lot of this updated crypto content and all of my content. All right, everyone, take care. It was good seeing you. Leave any questions or comments, and be sure to share this with anyone who's trying to learn more. We'll see you soon.